Good evening, and welcome back to another evening and the next episode of I Can Fix It. This is episode 3, step 2, the household test. Last time we established the first practical step: demand the same evidentiary standard from every major institution. Claims must be tested against evidence, not against authority or confidence. Today we take the next step. Once we have the evidence, we apply a simple but demanding filter. Measure every significant decision by its actual effect on American households first, not by its effect on institutions, not by its effect on foreign governments, not by effects on abstract metrics alone, but by what it does to the daily economic reality of ordinary American families. This is the household test. Why does this matter? A nation is not an abstraction. It is millions of households trying to pay for energy, food, housing, transportation, insurance, and medical care. When major decisions are made without this test as the primary measure, the costs tend to fall most heavily on the people least able to absorb them. History gives us a clear example of what happens to the household when the household test is ignored, and what becomes possible when it is applied. Historical sample 1: the energy decisions of the 1970s. In early 1970s, a series of policy choices and external shocks produced sharp rises in energy prices. Oil embargoes, domestic price controls, and regulatory decisions combined to create long lines at gas stations and sustained increases in the cost of heating, electricity, and transportation. The official focus at the time was often on geopolitical strategy and managing international relations. Household impact was treated as a secondary consequence rather than the primary measure of success or failure. The result was made measurable. The real incomes were squeezed, inflation accelerated, and family budgets were forced to absorb higher costs for years. Later, policy shifts that prioritized domestic energy production and reduced certain controls demonstrated that when household costs were placed first, prices could be brought down and stability restored more effectively. The lesson is not about any single administration. It is about the measuring stick. When the primary question is, how does this affect the average household's ability to afford energy, the range of acceptable decisions narrows a useful way. Historical sample 2: major military commitments and domestic trade-offs. Large-scale military engagements have repeatedly carried significant domestic economic consequences. Extended conflicts require sustained funding, which is drawn from the same pool of national resources that could otherwise support infrastructure, reduce tax burdens, or stabilize prices. Documented analysis of past long-term military commitments show consistent patterns: higher deficits, upward pressure on inflation during periods of high spending, and opportunity costs that appear in household budgets through higher taxes, higher interest rates, or reduced public investment in domestic priorities. When the household test is applied, the question becomes concrete. Does this commitment improve the security and prosperity of American families more than the resources it consumes would improve their daily economic position if directed elsewhere? If the answer is unclear or negative, the standard requires that the commitment be reconsidered or more narrowly defined. How to apply the household test today? The method is straightforward and can be used by anyone. First, identify the claimed benefit of a proposed decision, whether it concerns energy policy, trade, regulation, or foreign involvement. Second, translate that claimed benefit into household terms. Will it lower the cost of electricity, reduce the price of groceries, make housing more attainable, Stabilize the insurance premiums. Third, examine the evidence for those household effects using the standard we established in the previous episode. Look for primary data on prices, wages, and living costs rather than relying solely on aggregate statistics or official assurances. Fourth, compare the project household's benefit against the projected household cost. If the costs are immediate and visible while the benefits are distant or uncertain, the test is not met. This process does not require specialized experts. It requires only the discipline to keep returning to the same question. What does this actually do to the ability of ordinary American families to meet their basic needs? Connecting the steps. Notice how step 1 and step 2 work together. The evidentiary standard prevents us from accepting weak claims. The household test then forces us to evaluate the remaining claims by their real-world impact on the people the system is supposed to serve. Together, they form a practical filter that is both rigorous and accessible. They do not depend on the goodwill of any particular set of actors. They depend on a measurable outcome. Practical step 2 is not a slogan. It is discipline. Every significant decision on energy, on regulation, on foreign commitments, on spending is run through the same filter. Does this improve the daily economic position of American households, or does it impose new burdens on them? History shows that when this test is sidelined, costs accumulate and trust erodes. When it applied consistently, priorities become clearer and accountability becomes possible. Next time we will move to practical step 3. Treating transparency as a structural requirement rather than an optional virtue. Until then, consider these questions. When you hear a major policy proposal, how quickly can you translate its claimed benefits into concrete effects on a typical household budget? 2. What current decision on energy, food prices, or foreign involvement would look different if the household test were applied as a primary measure? 3. How often are household costs treated as the central standard of success, and how often are they treated as an unavoidable side effect? 4. If every major claim had to pass both the evidentiary standard and the household test before being accepted, what kinds of decisions would become harder to justify? These questions prepare the ground for the next step, because once we measure by household results, we must then insist on seeing the full information that makes those measurements possible. This is the household test. This is step 2. And that is where we will continue. If you're enjoying the episodes, I Can Fix This, We the People, each individual using their brain while it's still able, while you still can. Love you, mean it.